Hello there and welcome back to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers, and we're on Foliax once again because we've been doing science, and Foliax is the sort of centre of where a lot of the science has been happening at the moment because it has its own special 6 science packs, and that has unlocked quite a lot of stuff for us. So let's delve in. We start off, of course, with the discovery of the planet of Foliax, because you need to discover a planet before you can go there. And because of the slightly awkward layout of the solar system, we also needed to discover Arig. So as you can see, we've discovered it. We know all about it. We know a little bit about it, and we can go there. But we haven't been there yet, so if I click on it, nothing happens. We can't go and look at that planet. We've not made planetfall, we've not looked around, we just haven't touched that planet yet. But we need to discover it in order to be able to fly across from here to here. I suppose technically, we could have discovered Moschine and Meraxis and gone round the other side of the sun, or we could have picked up Tiber, Vesta and Hyerion and gone round that way, but both of those would have been silly ideas, so we went via Arig. We were then given a Foliax welcome. As we landed on the planet, we went out there and we immediately started punching trees as if we were playing Minecraft, and cutting down a Foliax willow gave us a random supply of seeds, probably, and also generated some recipes that we can do. So these first two are what I've been referring to as the Gamblomatron recipes, and so this allows you to turn a large quantity of spoilage or a large quantity of wood into some random seeds. And as you can see through there, we've got a 20% chance of getting any individual one of them. And so because there's 22 of them, you expect to get 4 or 5 seeds each time it runs, at least on average. And this system allows you to regain some of the seeds if you ever find you've run out of one of the seed types, because perhaps they've all spoiled, or you've not got any of them at any point. You can then always use the Gamblomatron recipes with some spoilage or some wood to try and get those seeds back and allow you to grow those particular weird types of tree again. It also got us the basic Foliax Biolab. We've talked quite a bit about these and how they can have their science consumption rates taken excitingly low when you start getting the higher tier qualities of them. But to start with, it's basically just an alternative to the Biolab from Gleba that's made in a slightly different way, and it just uses stuff you can pull straight out of the trees, so it's really quite easy to make when you're getting started on this planet. Similarly, you also get the hybrid processor, and we didn't use any of these because we cheated and went in with other stuff. However, I am planning to have another go at this planet at some point in a solo stream where I'm going to go through and play it properly the way the mod author intends it to be done. But suffice to say, these hybrid processors are what you use initially to turn all of your tree parts into actual resources. So for example, turning ferrier pods into actual iron bars, and so on and so on and so on, with all the different resources. And they require things that you can get easily enough on this planet by just smashing up some rocks to get the stone to make the stone furnaces, and then cooking that stone to make some stone bricks with, well, I'm sure we can find something organic to burn on this planet. These hybrid processors are actually a weird type of burner machine. So they take in the arcane cubes, which you can see right down at the bottom of this pop-up. And those will keep them running for quite a while, but if you want them to carry on running, you do need to have a steady supply of those being brought in. So they are a little bit more awkward, which is why we immediately started using the foundries. That and because we just already had them. And so after being welcomed to the planet, well, then you have an enormous number of different resources you can research. So you've got aluminium and copper and zinc and lead and obsidian and tin and iron and tungsten and uranium and holmium and fluorite and lithium and bitumen, and I've probably missed some as well. So we quickly ran through researching all of these, and many of these are researched by pulling up the appropriate tree type. So if I select the copper processing, you can see you get that by mining a cupria tree, which is the copper tree, and that teaches you how to then make copper bar in your arcane smelter machine, and also copper cable from copper bar. And then you can get zinc processing, which is you get by pulling up the calamina, which is the zinc tree, and that allows you to make zinc, and then also brass because you already know about copper. And then you can start producing chests and pipes and offshore pumps and so on. And most of these come together when you discover the appropriate tree and knock it over. We quickly rattle through 17 of these to get all the various different types of processing required to make all of these bits and pieces. Then we discovered the Foliax ways of making all kinds of normal Factorio stuff. So here we have an example. This is the electronic circuit, which here is made from bioresin and a green circuit board, which requires glass fibres and bioresin, and then you can make your electronic circuit board out of those, solder and electrical cables, and presumably you get solder and glass fibres from one of these other recipes here that are precursors to it. But eventually that'll allow you to make electronic circuits out of Foliax stuff. So we don't have iron plates, we don't have copper plates on this planet, so you need to find another way of making them, and this is what that gives you. There were a lot of these sort of recipes as well, so I'm not going to point to every single one in turn because that will take forever. But we've got military defences, we've got military weapons, we've got a burner agricultural tower, we've got a biolab, we've got belts, we've got scrap processing, landfill, steel, armour, lumberjack, solar power, and then various military weapon upgrades and power poles. One of those sticks out a bit to me because it's not something we've done anywhere else, and that's lumberjack. So this is a progressive research. We've got up to tier 11 of these, and apparently this just allows you to chop down trees incredibly quickly. Is that true? Can I now chop down trees very quickly? Yes, I can. It seems to be about one smack and they disappear. So this is what 11 levels of lumberjack research gets you. These trees stand absolutely no chance whatsoever. Then we developed the Foliax agricultural tower, and that was done by producing some tungsten. And once we made a tungsten bar, or 5 tungsten bars, we were able to start making the Foliax agricultural towers arcane. And these were sort of a burner tower, so they require a supply of arcane cubes to keep them running. And so we actually never ended up using them because we already had electrical ones because we went to Gleba first, and the Gleban ones are better, even if these ones are blue and therefore perhaps slightly prettier. I think these maybe have a slightly larger coverage area. Nope, I take it back. Exactly the same coverage area, but they are larger than the burner tower, so maybe that's what I was thinking of. I think they do have a larger inventory, however. So on this one, for example, we've got 3 blocks of input and 2.5 rows of output. On this one, we've got 3 rows of input and 3 rows of output, so there's a lot more space in there. However, I'm not convinced that's actually a good thing, because all of the things that go into the inputs and outputs of these towers are spoilable. So if we look in here, for example, well, we can see all of the seeds have spoiled, so that's a perfect example of them, well, spoiling. And then all of these Argiliaris pods are showing, well, they've got a 3-hour spoil time, so there's quite a long time left on them, but they are gradually going to spoil. So stockpiling more in here isn't really going to help. It's just going to mean you're going to have more stuff sitting in machines going off, rather than sitting on the ground as an actual tree, which won't go off because it's a tree. The next exciting thing we discovered was oil processing, the Foliax Way. And this is rather different to doing it the standard way, because this allows you to turn bitumen bar and water to heavy oil, light oil, or petroleum gas. So this is an alternative recipe for Foliax, which doesn't have normal oil, but it does have bitumen producing trees. Most of the rest of these recipes are pretty standard, so you can make lubricant from heavy oil as you'd expect. These are all just making solid fuel, cracking the things as you'd expect. We've got a slightly different recipe for making chemical plants, so that looks more complicated but is more Foliax appropriate. And then explosives are made in a different way, with bitumen, brimfruit and ammonia apparently. So that's a bit different. I don't remember us doing any explosive production on this planet, probably because any cliff explosives we needed we just brought in from Norvis, which is perhaps slightly cheaty, but that's what we've been doing anyway. After that, it was a case of rattling through a load more standard Norvian stuff, but with a Foliax twist. So the first example of this is the steel furnace, which in this case is made from steel plate and stone brick, which sounds very, very similar. Over here, it's steel plate and stone brick, so that one's exactly the same, you just unlock it separately on Foliax. Assembly machine 2s are another one, but they're a bit more complicated because this requires a special arcane assembly machine and then electric motors, fluid pumps, arcane gear wheels, arcane machine arms, rubber. So upgrading to assembly machine 2s is going to be a little bit more difficult on this planet, but it's something we would want to do if we hadn't dropped in with all of these things already unlocked on Norvis. There's lots more of these things as well. Now, I won't go through every single one in detail, but let's just run through. So we've got concrete, cliff explosives, plastic lamp, solar panel, radar, turrets, circuit networks, battery equipment, laser turrets, engine units, inserters, advanced circuits, electric furnaces, substations, exoskeletons, productivity 1, quality 1, rocket fuel, speed module 1, sulfuric acid, belt immunity equipment, and processing unit. Then we got on to the more advanced methods of producing the various resources. So in this case, we've got aluminium processing 2, which requires aluminium processing 1 as a prereq. It's somewhere up there. It is way up the tree over there. Once you've got this one, you can then start producing the, well, in this case it's the alumina, but with the second recipe, the one that's done in a chemical plant, as I was talking about in previous videos. And this massively improves your productivity, so you get far more aluminium out for the amount of Argiliaris pod you put in. So that's a massive improvement. We're very glad to see that. And of course, there were identical recipes for every single other resource in the game. Bitumen, calcite, copper, fluorite, holmium, iron, lead, lithium, obsidian, scrap, tin, tungsten, uranium, and zinc. Then we got a few more standard things like selector combinators, night vision equipment, efficiency 1, personal roboports, trains, fast belt, cars, elevated rails, and a military upgrade. And at this point, we discovered the second tier of research packs. And this one is very interesting because when you research Transportation Research 2, you lose Transportation Research 1 because the research in this technology removes previous tiers of the recipe, which is interesting because normally you don't get that. It works the way we saw with the raw resources, where you get a better recipe and it's up to you whether you switch over to it or not. You probably want to, but you don't have to. Whereas these ones, if you want to get any of this exciting stuff down here, then you need to do transportation research too, which means you then need to start making transportation research with the tier 2 recipe. And then after that, there's the tier 3 recipe, which is the same thing again, where you need to do yet another upgrade and then switch up to the blue circuit recipes. And each of these gets significantly more complicated, as you'll have seen in a previous video. And that gives you a sort of a weird, interesting upgrade path that you don't really see in vanilla, because vanilla just requires you to make more and more and more different types of science packs, whereas this one requires you to make the same ones, but with a more complicated recipe. And I found that quite interesting, and it gives you sort of a slightly different feel, I guess, because you don't have to upgrade them all at the same time, so you could sort of mess around with a variety of them depending on what you have available. Because we had 5 players and lots and lots of exciting toys, we just sort of rampaged through this stage and just did all the upgrades very, very quickly. But you don't have to. Then we got a load more basic Factorio researches, which I'm not even going to read out this time. I'll just flash them up on screen here for anyone who's interested. And then getting back to unique Foliax things, we have the tolerance modules. And these are a sort of a weird productivity or maybe an overclock module that only really applies on Foliax because they only go in the Foliax biolabs. And they're quite strange because they give you a significant speed boost and a productivity boost. And the productivity boost goes up with quality. And it's significantly better than a normal speed module, but not quite as good as a normal productivity module. And also slightly lower productivity than an overclock module, but it does give you that speed boost that we were talking about. But, against that, it gives you a massive energy consumption increase. So you spend loads and loads of energy, but it gives you a decent speed boost and a bit of a productivity boost. So, yeah, sure, why not? These are the only modules that can be put in those biolabs though, so it's definitely worth making these and making them as good as you possibly can. We were also able to produce Tolerance Module 2, which takes in some tungsten plates as well as the lower tier Tolerance Module, and that gets us even more speed and then brings the productivity up to the same level as a tier 1 productivity module. And of course Tolerance 3, which requires some holmium and gives you even more speed and a slightly bigger bump on productivity as well. So even at this top end, they're still not going to be as good as the actual productivity modules. However, because they're the only type of module you can put into a Foliax biolab, you're going to have to use them. We also developed fluorine in a Foliaxian way, which comes from all of these things and can be put into barrels. And we saw that being used last week in order to purify the uranium and separate out the 235 and the 238. And so you can see that's why this is then gives you the uranium refining and other things down here on the Foliax chain, and also gives you the quantum processors because you need to turn the fluorine into fluoroketone in order to cool down the quantum processor production, I guess. So there's some things out here that you get as extra toys. And yes, that includes the uranium refining, as I said. So from here, you get that isotope island punch. Lovely, a lovely fuel source there. It gets you centrifuges, and it gets you ways of splitting up a uranium on this planet, and then doing Covrex production as well. So each of these is in a slightly Foliaxian way, but basically it's the same sort of ideas. And we're getting close to the end now because we've got the Exodus, so the ability to escape from Foliax. So this is producing rocket silos and all the bits and pieces that go into making rockets. So we're building rocket parts on this planet as you'd expect from processing units, LDS and rocket fuel. That's fine. We didn't need to make a cargo landing pad because we brought it over from Norvis, and we could have made a space platform starter pack, but we didn't because we brought it over from Norvis. That might have been slightly naughty because we could have made space platform foundation out of steel and electrical cables. So we could have done all of this on the planet. We just, well, didn't. But maybe we should have done. There were a few more generic Factorio and standard researches that we picked up as well, but with the usual Foliax twist. But we did pick up something a little bit different, and that's the poison laser turret. And this is a laser turret, but instead of doing laser damage, it does poison damage. And this sounds interesting. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but there are a few things out there that have strange resistances to laser damage and not so much to poison. So maybe it'd be quite useful. Potentially against something like the Demolishers if we don't find better ways to deal with those. Or maybe against some of the other enemies we've seen out there, and we'll have to investigate which of those are susceptible to poison. Then we got one that I guess is supposed to sort of pull Foliax a bit more back into line with some of the other planets. And this is a system that allows you to unlock the arcane furnace, which presumably is going to need to be fueled by cubes, and then start turning iron bars into iron plates, copper bars into copper plates, zinc bars into zinc plates, and aluminium bars into aluminium plates. So this would turn all of the weird bar things we've been using all this time on Foliax into normal resources that we would then be able to use on other planets. And I suppose this is to give you a very, very useful unlock from doing Foliax, where you can go go back to other planets with your iron trees and your copper trees, your aluminium trees and your tin trees, and start growing massive quantities of metal in the form of trees there, which you can then convert over into the bars, and then using these arcane furnaces, you can convert those bars into plates, which you can then feed out into all of the rest of your normal factory. And so this would give you a functionally infinite supply of all of those metals, as long as you can build up a big enough plantation and keep it fed with seeds. This feels slightly cheaty. I think we won't be doing this because we try to avoid all of the infinite resource hacks that some of the planetary mods give us, at least on other planets other than the one where they came from in the first place. That said, this one feels better than some of the others. It does at least require a significant amount of land area and quite a few steps of processing in order to get decent amounts of those metals out. So it sounds not too unreasonable, just only a little bit unreasonable. So I think we probably won't use it, but I think it's one of the less cheaty ones we've discovered as we've been going through. That's linked to the Foliax soils. And so this allows you to then start growing, apparently, Foliax trees on other worlds. And you can grow various different colours of marsh, apparently, and which one you get is based on which type of tree parts you put in there. So you use wood and bitumen bar, you get a grass one. If you use bitumen and durissima, which I think is the tungsten bark, then you get purple marsh, and so on across the line here. So that means that growing trees on other planets is slightly less overpowered than I was implying, if you do in fact have to bring over a supply of these soils in order to reduce your growing areas. So it's still a bit overpowered, it's still free resources for nothing, but you do have to go through a number of additional steps in order to get that up and running. So maybe it's not too unreasonable, but also I feel like it is going to just throw the balance off on various planets if we do start using it. And then at the very end of the Foliax researches, we have the Amiga power generation system. So this is an Amiga power plant with a lot of very, very threatening box text around it. Interesting. It takes a lot of different things to put it together, including ice, which I guess you're going to have to ship down from space, because I don't think we've seen any of that on Foliax. And then it only gives you a 1 in 20 chance of making it anyway. So we've not played with these. These look weird and interesting, and I have no idea how they're going to work, because there's not very much helpful text in here. But apparently we can now make Amiga power plants and see what they do. I don't seem to be able to place ghosts of them, so Yes, I have no idea how this is supposed to work. I can't build it on the water. It's gone green here, so I should be able to build it. But for some reason, I just can't, so I don't know what's going on there. But it does sound like it's going to be something that will allow us to produce a lot of power in a very, very dangerous way. And looking at this, it does seem to be made out of bits and pieces from other machines. So I can see a Fulgora lightning collectors on the right-hand side there. There's a lamp at the bottom. That round thing in the middle, I want to say is the fusion power plant. And that looks like a bit of a centrifuge at the back there. And then one of the walls from one of the Fulgora ruins on the left-hand side. So an interesting looking design, but despite the interest, I still don't seem to be able to place it. So I don't know how that works. Maybe we'll look into it in the future. We also managed to get 2 health unlocks and an Igris magic speed upgrade, which I think is part of the reason I'm running around so quickly. Especially if I turn my exoskeletons off. I am presumably moving quite a bit quicker than I normally would. And that'll be thanks to that Igrian research we've done. We have done some Foliax bar productivities, and I think that's probably what we've got going on over here, and that's bringing us up to a 30% bonus on those by the looks of it. And that simply means that we get more bars out from running the recipes than we did before, which is lovely. And that'll be why we were seeing those plus 80% productivities instead of a plus 50% in the last video. We've also done a load of Foliax worker robot speed, which is how we've got the movement speed up to nearly a plus 1,000% for our bots. So that's amazing. The bots are going to be really, really quick now. And despite the bots being really, really quick, it still takes absolutely ages for them to get anywhere around our factory, because our factory has got so big. We've also unlocked all of these productivity bonuses. I won't read through and tell you about them all, because every single one of those just means that when we run the recipe that makes that thing, we get slightly more on the output than we would have done before. And you can see these down here, where we've got a 280% bonus on sulfuric acid, and we've got a 90% bonus on steel production, and so on and so on. There's a few weird ones, like getting a 105% bonus on steam turbine production. That's very strange. And then the water condensation is a handy one, because that means when we use the condensing turbines, we're getting back more and more and more of the steam as water that we can then pump back around and recycle if we're a bit short of water. So that's nice to have. But in general, they're all just bonuses that mean we get more stuff every time we run a thing. And that is the science. The science has been going well. We've got lots and lots of packs drifting through on Norvis, but I'll talk about that in more detail in a future video. I think for now that's enough technology we've been going in and poking at. Most of it was just very, very Foliax focused. But now we're finished off with that planet, we can hopefully start looking into a few other things that aren't just more and more and more productivity researches. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. You can come back, if you come back on Monday at 7:30 PM UK time, you can watch us playing a bit more of this live and see what planet we found ourselves on this time. If you fancy giving Planetary Pioneers a try yourself, then you can always download the mod from the mod portal and give it a shot. So you'll get all the planets we're playing with and all the quality of life mods, everything to allow you to play in the same universe if you use the seed 11111 when you get started. I'll also be back on Wednesday where I should be playing another game. At the moment that's currently Foundry, but I'm getting fairly close to the end, so maybe it won't be Foundry by the time you come along and watch, but please do come along then. It'd be nice to boost the numbers a little bit. And there'll be these videos coming out every Thursday and Friday, keeping you up to date on what's been going on in the Planetary Pioneers run and anything else I've been playing or doing. So thank you very much once again. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.